So it's really horrendous what's happening in the world right now. But we're here not to talk about geopolitics and things like that. We're here to talk about the auto industry, how it impacts you, what's going on here in the United States. There are a lot of implications as a result of what's happening in the Ukraine right now. In this video, we're going to walk you through all of the different impacts that automakers are facing as a result of what's happening there. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Ford.
Yes.
Let's start there.
Yes.
They have a 50% stake in 3 Russian automotive plants.
Yes.
The Ford Sollers is the Russian joint venture between Sollers of Russia and Ford. Most of the production at their plant there is the Ford Transit van and other commercial vans.
Well, that ain't making it here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's expectation that there's going to be even more pressure on Ford Transit vans, which if you've been following our channel for long enough, there's full-size van prices just continue to increase because of the lack of supply.
Yes.
General Motors. They have a limited supply chain risk because of what's going on in the Ukraine and Russia. They only sell about 3,000 vehicles annually in Russia, and they ended production there 7 years ago. So the implications there are relatively limited.
For GM, it's not a big deal. Heck, VW can lose more than 3,000 vehicles in a sinking ship. So
it did not sink. It just lit on fire.
No. It sank.
It did?
Yes.
That ship sunk?
The ship? Down goes the ship! Yeah, the ship sunk.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so the rescue plans for the salvage plans for any of those vehicles.
All right, that'll be a different video. All right.
Yes.
Hyundai.
Interfax
News reported that a Russian Hyundai official, announced the suspension of output at all of their St. Petersburg plants between March 1st and March 5th. They sell over 10,000 vehicles per month in Russia, so there's some implications for Hyundai there. They're not going to be selling as many cars. They're not coming off the production line.
The real reason they're not going to be selling that many cars is, well, the ruble is now worth about 2 cents.
Yeah.
So that people won't be able to afford
to buy them,
Plus, they won't have access to cash.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mitsubishi, following Volvo's lead, Mitsubishi announced that they will halt production and the sale of their vehicles in Russia. That's effective March 1st. They have about 2.2 market share in Russia, so actually pretty substantial. Stellantis.
Yes.
So their CEO, he recently announced that they're going to put a task force in place to really understand all the implications from what's going on in the supply chain as a result of what's happening.
That sounds official.
Honestly, it does. It was on the homepage of Automotive News as well. I think Stellantis has kind of waved the flag that they're pretty concerned about what's happening there and the impacts that it could have on their business.
Believe it or not, there's a rather large manufacturing capability in Ukraine for car parts.
Yep. And similarly to Ford, they were producing the transit vans and other commercial vehicles there. Stellantis, I think it was back in January, they announced that they were going to be exporting vehicles from Russia to Western Europe, and they were more of the commercial vehicles that they produce.
That's not going to happen.
All right, Toyota. Now, this is unrelated to the conflict in the Ukraine, but recently, it's worth mentioning here, they had their all domestic plants, all 14 of their domestic plants down because of a cyber attack.
Yes.
Now, I know they've brought them back up within about 48 hours, but still, or 72 hours.
So if they lost 48 hours of production, then they lost about 20,000 vehicles that they had hoped to produce, that they did not, and that they will not.
Volkswagen Group. All right, because of what's happening in the area, they halted production of all of their electric vehicles for over a week. The reason being because they couldn't get the supplies that they needed from their manufacturing partners, their suppliers in the Ukraine. We also obviously know, you just mentioned the ship that went down. That was a Volkswagen. It wasn't a Volkswagen ship, but it carried Volkswagen products.
It certainly did.
There's a lot of concern if the fire that was started on that was actually a result of electric vehicles.
Well, now we'll never know, since that ship, along with its cargo, is resting on the bottom of the ocean floor.
I cannot believe that happened.
Yes.
All right, now Volvo, another automaker that's had some impacts as a result of what's going on. On February 28th, they were the first automaker that actually ceased shipments of new vehicles to Russia. They cited the fact that they wanted to avoid possible conflicts and the changing sanctions that were going on.
Pretty amazing, considering that Volvo was actually a Chinese company.
Geely owns Volvo.
Yes.
They only sold 9,000 cars in Russia last year, but still, they were the first automaker to pull out. All of this kind of ties back to what we know about the chip shortage, which is the fact that the Ukraine is one of the major producers of neon.
Yes.
I think, what was the statistic
90%.
that Reuters, 90% of
the world's neon comes from Ukraine, and the neon is needed for the lasers when they're producing the microchips, the semiconductor chips. So if the semiconductor chip manufacturers can't get their hands on the much-needed neon, then that means there will be less chips available.
Yeah, and obviously with the push, well, maybe it's not obvious, but the push towards electric vehicles has resulted in more complex vehicles requiring more chips. So there's this interesting juxtaposition of we have vehicles that require more chips and we're putting more money to build them, and right now we actually can't access one of the primary components that we need.
Yeah.
There's a lot of concern. I've been reading a lot online. I'm not trying to promote a conspiracy theory or anything like that. But TSMC, which is one of the largest semiconductor producers, they're located in Taiwan.
Yes.
Again, we're not geopolitical commentators, not even pretending to be one. Neither of us stayed at a La Quinta Inn last night.
Well, I did stay at the Holiday Inn.
But there's a lot of concern about the fragility of our supply chains is pretty obvious. And when Russia invaded the Ukraine, okay, now the neon's gone. If anything were to happen in Taiwan, there's an incredible concern that what's going to happen to TSMC. Yes. Last year when there was the drought even that Taiwan was facing, we were in a position where supply was short. So there's a lot of impacts that happen from these devastating travesties that are impacting the world.
As I said a month or so ago, nobody can really predict what might befall the world that could create more hardship for everybody. And I think right now we find ourselves in a situation where nobody really predicted that there'd be a war, and there is, and it's going to impact everything in our lives.
And even think about the fact that Toyota had to take production down for 48, 72 hours. The stalwart, the bell at the ball of production. They had to shut everything down in their home country because of a cyber attack. There's going to be more of that. And we've talked about on this show before, Tesla security researcher hacks into cars.
He was an 18-year-old.
He was an 18-year-old kid. Yeah. But hear me out here. There are lots of implications of everything going online. We hear more stories about consumer impacted by someone hacking into car. The Tesla story was a bigger story than this Toyota one. But if you think about it, every aspect of their supply chain is also probably connected to the internet, and that can be attacked as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I think we'll hear more stories like this. I
think we'll find ourselves confronting more shortages of various types.
Yeah.
Not just chips, not just oil, but things that we haven't even thought about yet. It could be time to run to your local Costco and stock up on toilet paper again.
No, we're not. Maybe. I mean, it's never a bad idea. Yeah. The prices are so good.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm headed to Costco after we do this.
Check the article if you want to get it. We'll keep updating it with the latest news about the impacts of what's happened in the Ukraine. Devastating. We hate to even be having to make a video about this, but it's our responsibility to share with you
what's going on,
and the implications.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Pops.
Thank you.